Hey, hey, hey. What's up? What's up? What's going on? What's going on, everyone? All right. It's Wednesday. You know what it is. And I'm Donovan Hitchmaster West. Welcome to another episode of Wednesdays with West. What's going on, good people? I see you, Allie. Pumpkin, what up? Nikki, what up? Mata Christina, what up? Honesty 848, I see you. How's everyone doing, huh? Hope everyone's doing well. So, it is Wednesdays with West. It's 9 p.m. Well, 9:02 actually, to be more specific. But I'm boring. That's not me. I'm just saying what's up to I'm boring out there. I'm boring, okay. That's an interesting name, but thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. So, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing? Pumpkin, I see you. You checked in saying you're well. Hope everyone else is doing well this Wednesday evening. And I hope you guys are ready to have some good conversation. You know, as you already know, thanks, Honesty. I see you. Thanks for joining me. This is every Wednesday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. We talk about all things relationships. And I'm excited to see you guys, to interact with you guys. So hopefully you all are going to give me some stuff to talk about. You know, one thing that we like to do is, hey, what's going on, Chris? One thing we like to do is to make sure that the conversations we're having are reflective of your interests, your concerns, your questions, your comments, all that good stuff, and not necessarily stuff that I cook up to just speak at you guys. We don't like to do that, all right? So please make sure that you come ready to talk about all things relationships, all right? Daphne, what's up? Thanks for joining us. All things to Maradona, I see you. Thanks for joining me on this Wednesday evening where we talk about all things relationships. So those of you that know, well, I need y'all to show. So show and prove by way of asking questions, making comments. You know, one of the topics I wanted to cover today is the comment, it's complicated. But I don't want to talk about that just yet. I just wanted to put that out there real quick. Y'all can let that marinate a little bit. But before we go further on that topic, I want to talk to you about what are some of the things in the area of relationships that you would like to cover. All right? So what are some of your questions? What are some of your comments? Things that you may have, talked about amongst your girlfriends, amongst the fellas, maybe at the water cooler, maybe in somebody's DM. What's going on? Okay, Mata Christina, first out the gate. How can a single gal get back into the market after so many years of being single and content? Key term. Being content. So, if you were single, if you're single, you're getting back into the market. The first thing is you got to make sure that you take inventory. All right. I talked about this before, but I can't reiterate this enough. You have to take inventory in terms of where you are now that you're single and you're about to get back into the market. So are you single and ready to mingle? Or are you single and not attainable in terms of, really being able to be emotionally engaged, so to speak? So if you're single and you're just looking for some entertainment, right? You're just looking to be entertained. What does that mean, you may ask me? Well, I'm glad you asked. Single, but you want to just be entertained means that, perhaps you just want some adult company, right? You want to have adult conversation. Perhaps you're a parent or you're someone that just goes to work and goes home, but you don't really have any interaction with anyone, to your of your interest. And so maybe you just want to have some good dialogue, some good interaction, have a meal and not be by yourself while you're eating when you're going out, that kind of thing. You want to keep it simple, right? Make sure that you actually do that, but take inventory again of where you are. So if you're not ready to be emotionally available, then make sure that you let people know to keep it really light. If you're going to hang out and grab a bite or do something real simple, but don't do anything that requires a great deal of engagement, such as, long, deep conversations about your future and all that other good stuff. Because just maybe that other person across the table from you may be in a different space where they're looking to engage for the sake of actually really engaging. So if you're single and you're ready to mingle, that means you're ready to mingle. And that is you're ready to date. Make sure that you manage expectations around what that really means. We need to date like how white people date, okay? Not like how black people date. I'm going to say that again. We need to date like how white people date. What does that mean? That means Mark dates Mary on Monday, and then maybe on Wednesday he dates Judy, okay? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Mark and, and Mary getting together and dating a bunch of times. And then eventually, you know what? Mark looks over at Mary and says, well, I guess we're together. Or Mary's like, look, me and Mark are out all the time. I'm his bae. That's my boo. Game over. Like, no, we're not doing that. Okay. When you're out there, you're single, you're ready to date. Let the people know in your space that you're dating. Okay. Which means that, no, I don't want any strings. Don't touch me. Don't even touch me up, but get off me. We hanging out. We getting to know one another, all that good stuff. So when you're dating, make sure that you manage expectations around what does that actually mean, that you really define it. Okay. And then when you're ready to take it further, that means that you're not all over the place. You're not doing a whole bunch of stuff. You're just going to interact with that person one-on-one, or you're going to define at least what it is, this thing that you're going to get into. Make sure that you do that, all right? Take some time to do that. Big Jose, what up, bro? Thanks for joining me, man. Okay, so at the end of the day, Fatty Cakes, PYT, what up? Thanks for all joining me, man. I really appreciate that. We're talking about, what is it that you do when you're single and you're ready to get out on the scene, especially after you were content? Well, remember that you were content, which means that now that you're single, I'm assuming that something went wrong. So we talked earlier about doing some kind of, assessment, taking some kind of inventory and just knowing where you are. Are you in the healing stages where you still have some things to kind of reconcile as it relates to your past relationships? You still need to heal to some extent, right? If you're in that stage, then be careful, all right? I'm single and I'm not available is what you really need to be saying. And unavailable means that you're not available emotionally to really engage down that path of dating, which then transitions into courting and all that other good stuff. You're not in that space right now. Right now, you're just shaking off the cobwebs. You're just reconciling, with things that took place in the past, getting to know yourself again, get to love yourself again, practicing levels of forgiveness of yourself, perhaps of the individual that you was in a relationship with. All this good stuff is happening when you come out of a relationship. And it's a tough part, but nobody really wants to do it. We typically jump from one relationship over to the next, just swinging like Tarzan, right? From one relationship to the next. We got to stop that. We got to just make sure that at the end of the day, if you're just coming out of a relationship and now you're ready to get into the market, just take some inventory of where you are. If you are healed or you feel like you're on that road to recovery, now you're ready to engage, then you got to also just make sure that when you are dating someone that you're doing a couple of things. One, you want to be clear about what season you're in, okay? If you're in a dating season, great. If you're in a courting season, then that's great too, but you want to make sure that you manage expectations. So if you're dating someone, let them know what it's really hitting for. Let them know real talk, like this is what your objective is. If someone's talking some relationship stuff and you like, nah, not right now, let them know. Don't be so fearful of whatever the outcome may be to the point where it actually starts to manage how you communicate with someone. You need to be transparent and you need to be honest so that you don't waste time. Don't waste time. And when you start to manipulate the truth for the sake of, reducing the level of rejection or the possibility of actually being around this particular person, then now you're really now you're in the game of deceit and it's not going to really end well. Okay. So just be careful to protect your heart, but also make sure that you protect your image, your brand. And if you're being straight up, that's probably the best way for you to be, period. And I'm sure that you being authentic in your approach is going to actually, attract more people than it is going to detract and create situations of rejection. All right. So just keep that in mind when you're out there dating and hanging out and all that good stuff. Also, learn to have fun. Often we're out in the space and we're looking like it's the first day of school. We're looking like security. We got these straight faces on. We keep looking just down at our cell phones and not really engaging with people. There's a lot of body language that's basically saying the wrong thing when we're in that situation. So we got to be very careful at the end of the day that if you are single and available, you're ready to engage with people, have some dialogue, things of that nature. You got to make sure that your body language shows it, right? You got to smile. You got to have some fun. You got to be engaging, talk, pick your head up, put your phone away. actually reach out and touch someone. And not everyone that you interact with is someone that you're going to actually end up in a romantic situation. It's okay to just communicate and bust it up with somebody. You may identify someone that's a good friend, and maybe it turns into something, maybe not. But the reality is, if we just focus solely on the people that we're attracted to, that also is not a good situation either. You don't want to be in that type of situation either. It would be nice that you actually interact with someone and you're able to have a conversation, and perhaps your phone isn't your only friend at that networking event or that social event that you happen to be at, okay? So just keep that in mind, all right? Anyway, so we're talking about relationships, all things relationships. Thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate that. Crazy Jade, what's going on? I see you. R. Benny, what up? System Curves, I see you. Psycho Mode, what up? I see you. All right. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate that. All right. So how do I make sure I attract men on my level? Well, first of all, you got to know what your level is, right? So know what your level is, and what does that actually mean? How do you actually convey that level in terms of, is it how you dress? Is it the car you drive? Is it the words that come out of your mouth? Is it your body language? Is it the places you frequent in terms of, are you at the club, the lounge? Are you at the library, the church? Are you at some kind of a fraternal or some kind of sorority type situation? Community service. What are you doing? What are the things that actually, define you in terms of your brand? So think about those things. And that actually becomes your calling card to some extent, right? People of like mind, like spirit tend to flock together. They tend to go to these same types of events and other extracurricular activities together, or run into each other in these spaces. So it's important that if that's really your image, your brand, I'm going to say that again. If that's really your image or brand, again, I'm going to say it one more time. If that's really, meaning you being honest with yourself, right? Who are you really? Because if you're putting up that front to say, okay, this is who I am versus this is how I would like to be perceived, then you gotta take the right kind of inventory and look at yourself in the mirror and have an honest conversation, have a courageous conversation, as my buddy Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson would say, have a courageous conversation with yourself, okay? Remember, stop running around with these masks on and coming to the table with your representative. Because when you're tired of wearing that mask, right? Now you're going to have a whole other situation where you're in something that you really don't want to be in any longer because you're tired of wearing that mask. So be honest with yourself in terms of who you are. So attracting someone on your level, what really is your level? If you're working towards getting to a certain level, then be transparent about that. If you're on a certain level, then what are the things are you doing, right? That's what I'm asking you. What are the things that you're doing to actually demonstrate that you're on that level? And if someone isn't on your level, what does that actually mean, by the way? What does that actually mean? Does that mean that they're not earning the same kind of money as you? They don't have the same kind of degrees you have? Perhaps they work in a different kind of industry? What is it? So what's your level? Think about that some more. And more importantly, how important is your level to the whole game? Meaning, does that actually transpire to something that contributes significantly in a beneficial way to your relationship? If it doesn't, then throw it out the window. Real talk. If it's about personality, chemistry, being able to grow with someone that can really love and adore you, and also likewise you can feel that way about them without some of the things on your technical list of what qualifies you to be on your level. Just think about that a little bit, all right? Challenge yourself on that topic of what the level is, okay? So I hope I answered that. All right. System occurs talking about waves, prayer cloth. I guess I'm preaching tonight, huh? All right. PYT saying, Dr. West, give some tools women can use to not get emotionally attached too soon. Well, one of the tools you can use is called reality. Your reality, right? Take a pill called reality. Take a reality pill. No, what I mean by that is that in every situation, what we tend to do is we process information based off of what we really believe or what we really want to be the situation. And so our brains are very, very powerful in that what we tend to do is take the information, process it to support whatever it is we believe about a particular situation. So it's very hard for us to actually be wrong because we're always just looking for information to be right. And the more we're right, the more we feel we have a good rap or a good grip on what reality is. But as I mentioned earlier about the question when it came to, people on your level and understanding that the only thing that you can actually do to maintain, an emotional balance really is to challenge some of your feelings. I'm not talking about become a hater on what you're feeling or what you're going through, but understand just where you are right now, right? What's the context of why you're feeling this way? Are you rebounding from a prior relationship? Are you in a situation where there were certain things that took place in that prior relationship that you never necessarily healed from? And as a result of that, they have an exaggerated value right now because of this person demonstrating certain qualities that you were looking for in a prior relationship. Also, you can have unresolved issues with yourself. And as a result of that, someone that makes you feel a certain kind of way, you may have a certain kind of feeling back for them because of them feeling a void, an emotional void. So these are some of the things that take place. Typically, when we don't heal from a prior relationship, or we haven't necessarily started the process of intentionally loving on ourselves, we have these emotional minds that get tripped. And not all emotional minds cause us to blow up. Sometimes emotional minds, when they're tripped, basically, they can put us in a certain space where it becomes almost seductive how we're feeling, right? We feel enamored in terms of the person that's making us feel a certain kind of way. And as a result of that, the feelings we have to them may be actually stronger, a lot stronger than they would normally be if we were actually fully healed from prior relationships or situations that we haven't dealt with ourselves. So just keep that in mind as you are thinking about ways to really take a good assessment of how you feel about somebody. It's not always about, just how amazing they are. And I don't want to sound like a hater. I'm not a hater. I'm a congratulator. I love the fact that, I love to hear about people when they're excited about someone being in their life. However, I always stress that you need to be very intentional about the assessment you're doing on where you are. Where's your heart at? Okay? Did you heal from that? Are you engaged in something now too soon transitioning out of what you were in? Have you done the work on yourself? And so these are the things that I think you should think about, you should meditate on, you should pray on, you should focus on before you really get engaged in that situation, because ultimately what tends to happen is it wears off. And then now you wake up one day and you're looking at this person like, oh man, wow, really? How long have I been here, right? So just think about that for a minute before you go too deep in a direction that you can't really come out of, all right? Without causing harm, that is. All right? System of Curve says, woo, I'm allergic to dating. That's a loaded comment. You're not allergic to it. You just got a couple of hives from dealing with the wrong person. It's okay, though. All right, you got to get back in the game. All right, System of Curves, I hope you hear me. All right, so Daphne says emotionally, socially, and spiritually. Yes, all those things are necessary. All right, I'm out right now keeping that in mind. Okay, good to hear that. Pumpkin, I hear you. See Pride, thanks for joining me, good brother. Good to see you the other day in D.C. holding it down. See Pride, definitely got to get some of your products as well on that fashion line. Got to catch up with you on that. All right. So Pumpkin said, I'm TRS involved right now. There you go. That's the way to do it. Right? You're involved with the relationship script, which we're going to give you the script on how you should, operate in certain situations. And also, more importantly, if you are a little bit sick, you're a little bit heart sick, we got the script for you also so that we can get you better. All right? Miss Jessie, thanks for joining me. I appreciate that. Miss Missy, I see you. Thank you for joining us. All right, Mrs. Green, thank you for joining us. Ferris, what up? And Reblanc, I see you. Riri, what up? And Gia, what up? I see you. Thank you all for joining me. So we're talking about all things relationships. And at the end of the day, what we're looking for is for you, my audience, to give me some questions, some comments, okay? That's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about this being reflective and not prescriptive. What does that mean? That means that I'm not looking to just preach at you, because that's not what I do. My goal is to make sure that this is relevant to you. So the only way I can know that this is relevant is if you're asking the questions. Now, from time to time, I go to a bag of anonymous questions, but I don't want to do that. I want to depart from that right now. I want to make sure that everyone that has a question, we can answer that right here and right now. And there's no question that's a bad question, by the way. If you need to slide into the DM and ask the question, we can do that. But right now, my team, Lydia and Kara, they're all over the place right now. So it's just me. So in terms of me getting back to your questions in the DM, it'll have to be later. But for right now, for my fellas, for my ladies that are here, we're talking about all things relationships. So what are some of the things that are in your world, in your arena, that you care to, that you have the courage to share with us, that are related to, this whole thing called relationships, affairs of the heart? Oscar, thanks for joining us. 215 Sass, what up? Thank you for joining. Okay, so PYT says, Dr. West, thank you, from your lips to God's ears, all right? Dr. West, how can you let someone know you're not interested politely and kindly? I have someone, I guess I gave someone my number recently, and they are not taking the hint. Well, there's two ways that people learn. One way is typically when you provide the context for what they need to learn. And that is, how you make whatever it is that you're teaching them relevant to their world, okay? So when you gave this person a number, I'm assuming that you gave it to them haphazardly or whatever, and, you didn't, I'm assuming you were being friendly or nice when you gave them the number and they were asking for the number as a friend, maybe, and now they switched up and they're texting you too much, or hopefully they're not sending any crazy pics or anything like that, right? But if that's the situation, what I would just say is that you reiterate it back to, again, I gave you the number under this context, all right? And that is that we would chop it up. As I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, I talked about when you are getting back into the dating scene, that, it's not always an immediate thing that you're looking to get into something intimate, right? You may just want to hang out. You may just want to have, some adult conversation, some adult interaction without it going too adult, if you get the drift. So provide the context for why you gave the number. That's the first way that people learn, is when you provide the proper context so that they can understand how this really applies to them. The second way that people really learn is through experiential learning. And so what that means is that if this person is texting you, calling you, or whatever they're doing, unfortunately, they qualify now for, that's right, you figured it out, right? Ghosting. You got to ghost them. So I'm not going to say for you to change your number. No, we don't do that. It's 2020. We're not changing numbers. At the end of the day, you just got to ghost the dude. All right. So there's your answer. If somebody's bothering you or whatever, you got to ghost them after you try to be nice about it and let them know that it's not hitting for what you think it's hitting for. We're not about to do that. And if they continue to persist like it's some sick romantic movie that they watch, you let them know that, that's Disney. This is real life. And so now you're going to get ghosted because you wasn't listening. All right. Next question. Hope I answered your question. All right. Miss Bade, what's going on? I see you. Columbia, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. How do you let your current partner know you want a poly or open relationship? That's a very tough situation. But the way that I would breach the conversation is really actually bring it up and ask them, what are their thoughts? Sometimes, you might want to ease into it by way of looking at something on the topic, right? There are a lot of things that you can watch on demand, and I'm not talking about something overly sexual or anything like that, but just on the topic of it. You can bring it up that way. You could share an article and say, someone shared this with me. What are your thoughts? And so getting some initial thought on the topic, I think, from your significant other is important to do. And making sure that, more importantly, when you do it, you're in the proximity where you can actually have some FaceTime, be able to see one another and talk about that. Really get a sense of, their body language, their energy about it. In certain instances, right, the first initial response is going to be comedic, right? Like, yeah, right, ha ha, he. But, you want to, come back to it again and ask the question again. What are your thoughts? Real talk, I have a friend, do one of those types of things. Or you may want to revisit something that was already shared in a prior conversation, perhaps from you or your significant other. If you believe that this is really a deal breaker, and at the end of the day, this is something that you really want, I would go ahead and just and have that tough conversation in terms of where you are, and really examine, why do you want an open relationship? Is there something that's missing from that relationship? Or do you just seem like, after doing some introspection, that you're not a monogamous person? And that's a great thing to do, is to actually arrive at some point, after doing some introspection and saying, you know what, this is who I am. Ultimately, I believe all of us are. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what your persuasion is. I think ultimately what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're dealing with people straight up, as they are. Who they actually are is something that we are all interested in. We don't want our reality to be manipulated by people's representative, and the representative being created, of course, out of fear. And so when you do understand what kind of space you're in, if you are someone that's a polygamist, if you're someone that's polyamorous, whatever you want to say, you want to think about, what's the best way that you break it to someone after coming to that conclusion. And perhaps they are with it, and maybe they're not. But it doesn't change who you are. Once you really have taken that introspection and you've committed to that, it doesn't change it. So you don't need to be in the closet about it. You really need to breach the subject in a way that someone can really think about it in a very meaningful way. But, converting people and all that good stuff, I don't think that's good. I think it's better you ask an open-ended question and see where people are, so that people don't necessarily feel like they need to answer it a certain kind of way to appease you, all right? That's the best way to keep up some kind of, I think, transparency and honesty in your dialogue with your significant other. All right, so I hope I answered that question, Columbia. Pumpkin says, what is too much when it comes to sending pics while dating? What is too much? Too much is when you go beyond, I believe, what someone would define as, sexy or attractive pictures. And so I wouldn't, throw something out there and just test the waters. I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's nothing like good old fashioned communication. So talking about, what's the, I guess what's the parameters of that relationship, I think is very important to do. So, someone may actually get totally turned off by, you sending, pics and I'm assuming when you say pics while dating, I would assume that these are not your normal pics, because all those normal pics, right, we can find on Instagram, Facebook, that type of thing. So, I'm assuming that you may want to just really have that question poised and ready to shoot that early in your dating situation to find out if that's something that they're entertained by. If they're not entertained by it, or perhaps they're not saying it right now, that's something that you should still take into account and say, you know what, I'm gonna sit on these pics for right now, and then maybe later on down the line, perhaps if that person is more comfortable, they may actually come out of their shell and say, actually, yeah. Or perhaps if you are in situations where you're thinking about dating someone, long distance, again, right, something that you may ask a lot sooner than later in terms of, what someone else's twist is, all right? QDB Publishing, what up? Thanks for joining us. PYT says, Dr. West asking for a friend, what is the best way to motivate an unmotivated partner? My relationship is becoming stale and we are both complacent. Ouch. So now we're talking about, being in a space where, they're wearing that same old robe, right, to the bed. They got those same tacky slippers. They got the boxer shorts or boxer briefs, right? They got more holes than they got material at this point, right? They're not even trying anymore. So, what is the best way to motivate an unmotivated partner? One of the ways is you stepping your game up. Think about what you're doing, what you're not doing, and bring that energy back, that creativity back. And I'm saying for you to do that because of your attraction, your interests, and things of that nature. So don't necessarily wait to see something so that you can then, reply with that. I think that's very important that you actually, don't let what someone is change who you are. If that's who you are, if you bring a certain amount of energy, creativity, to the relationship, continue to do that. Obviously, in addition to that, what you want to do is you want to communicate that you're not happy in that space, that that you have expectations, that at one point in time, these needs were met, and you'd like to reconnect, when it comes to that space. So I think at the end of the day, people do from time to time get complacent, and you want to also take some inventory as to why that may be the case. There may be a certain reason for this season, if you will, when it comes to what they're going through. Is there something happening at the job? Something happening with the family? Something happening between the both of you? What's going on? Is there something happening with them in terms of mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, right? There's something changed in terms of their body that, they don't necessarily feel as confident anymore. So there are a number of different reasons why this person may not be, at their A game and they've gotten complacent. And it may not necessarily just be because you've been together for a certain period of time, but really pay attention to all the things that are happening and think about what's the best way to really have that conversation. But I would also say that while you're going through this, do not change your energy, right? Don't play matchup games when it comes to your energy, your creativity, your interest, your attraction to your significant other, okay? Hope I answered that satisfactorily. You said being complacent is causing us to resent one another. Well, again, resentment is something that is usually takes place also when you don't communicate enough. And when you do communicate, I think at the end of the day, you make that person more accountable, but also don't erase the fact that you have to be accountable as well. And you have to love on someone regardless of how they're really loving on you. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the reality is that you don't want to get into this situation where I'm loving you just so that I can get something back, or I'm loving you if you love me back. That's really not what you're supposed to do in the love game, right? That's the reason why in many ways when we talk about higher levels of love and commitment, you're talking about doing this before God and having God centered in these types of relationships. Why? Because the most perfect love, they said, is God centered love. And that is agape love. That's loving someone for the sake of loving them. So remember that and keep that in mind, that when you get into a quid pro quo kind of situation, a this for that situation, that's not really the best example of love. And although we are very much conditioned that way, that's a way that we have to break ourselves from so that we can get to a higher level of intimacy with our significant other. Don't let what they are change who you are. All right. D West, thanks for joining me, bro. I appreciate that. Big girl Desi, what up? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate that. D West talking about no long distance. That's the BS. QDP, hey, what up again? I agree, D West. You guys are agreeing. I appreciate that. Motivate partner by leaving them. No, D West, you don't just leave them. You tripping, bro. And I know what you're doing right now. You're in that swipe mode, bro, where you just say, you know what? Swipe to the left. Nah, we're not doing that though. All right. You communicate through that situation. So anyway, one life, live your best life. You're right, bro. YOLO, right? I agree. But while you're living your best life, don't look back at your life and resent it because you didn't communicate, because you were short-sighted when it came to a relationship. Remember one of the key things you also have to do in a relationship, and that is you got to demonstrate some level of humility. You got to learn that other person. You got to also check yourself at times, right? A relationship is work. And the minute that it becomes work doesn't mean that's the minute that you should roll out. So keep that in mind when you're doing it, all right? But also have the discipline, right, and the discernment that when you are in a relationship and you recognize that, you know what, things are just not meshing up, this is not comfortable for 9 out of 10 people, but you then need to start making some moves in terms of what are some next steps as it relates to getting out of that relationship. If it's toxic, if it's not, if you're not being satisfied, despite your repeated attempts to talk to your partner, to engage your partner, to get some assistance, for you and your partner by way of, counseling, coaching, that type of thing. You got to know when to fold it. You got to know when to pull out basically and get yourself together and heal from what may be potentially a bad situation. Right. All right. So, D West, thanks for the endorsement. Daphne, if you really care for a person, you will always want to bring your A game. You're right, but remember the human condition. And the human condition is, we're moody. All right, so we're not robots, right? So we don't wake up every morning, and we're like, hey, good morning, right? And we're not always at our best. And so there are times where our A game is an A game, and then our A game, the best we can do is like a C or a D minus or something crazy. So it's important that we understand that. Also keep in mind there are reasons for the season sometimes, right? So there are issues that impact our spirit, our mind. Depression is sometimes an issue, right? Some anxiety is sometimes an issue. There are different things that may typically be happening to an individual and it has nothing to do with you. You heard the song, you probably think the song is about you, right? You probably think their attitude and their overall energy is about you. But the reality is there may be something else going on. So if you actually love this person, pay attention, right? Seek first to understand them and see what's going on. There's a saying the saying is, I see you. And I see you means that I see where you're coming from above where I'm feeling you, right? So beyond my personal feelings about what's going on, I see your point. I see where you're coming from, why you may have why you're even looking at me a certain kind of way. I see your perspective. Psychologists also refer to this as the theory of mind, the ability to see through someone's eyes. And so your ability to see through someone else's eyes is also another demonstration of your love for them, because you're looking beyond just how this person is making you feel or pushing certain buttons, if you will, and you're looking beyond all of that. You're looking at, why are they moving the way they're moving? So there are deeper reasons sometimes. I'm not saying all the times, but there are deeper reasons why people tend to shift in terms of their attitude, their behavior, their overall energy, their A game, all of the above. All right? So Daphne's talking about, that's just how I see it. Jamos, what's going on? D West quoting me. I appreciate that. Daphne talking about Christ first. That's right. Daneslin, what's going on? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate that. Beautifully Divine, thanks for all joining me. We're talking about all things relationships. I'm your man here for the night, Donovan Hitchmaster West, and this is the Relationship Script, where we talk about all things relationship. By the way, we don't just talk about something that I may have figured out, I'm going to talk to y'all next week about or this week about. No, we talk about what you want to talk about, right? So whatever questions you have on relationships, if you would like another perspective, I'm right here, all right? So let's talk about anything at all under the sun relationships. There are no questions that are bad questions. We've been talking a lot about, what you deal with while dating people and all these other issues that come along with it. We also talk about, what are your expectations? We talked about polyamorous relationships. There are a lot of different things we talk about. But by the way, everything we talk about is about whatever you want to talk about, not me. So this is a reflective approach and not a prescriptive approach to relationships. All right. So D West talk about, mess with them because you mess with them. I hear you, bull. So anyway, Mike Morrow, thanks for joining me. I appreciate that. Cherry Garrett, what up? Thanks for joining me. 215. You said, what was the topic tonight? I joined late, so I missed the bulk of the discussion. We've been talking about a lot of different things on relationships. However, one of the things I wanted to also bring up, if you guys are interested, is what does it mean when you say it's complicated, huh? What do you mean when you say it's complicated, huh? What are your thoughts? So we need to discuss what that means, right? It's complicated. You meet someone and they say, well, it's complicated. Is there such a thing? Is it really complicated? Or do we think that that's a term that gets thrown around just to say that, you know what, I have someone, but I'm saying. So what are your thoughts about that? But I see there's a couple of other comments, and we can come back to my comment, but I want to make sure I take care of you guys first. Relationships or work, a real relationship needs to be built and maintained. D West, you're absolutely right about that. Dr. West says, PYTnet, give us insight on how to deal with our partner having a close friend of the opposite sex. I don't feel they're cheating, but feel they confide in them too much. Well, there is such a thing as, emotional infidelity. There is such a thing as that, by the way. So, physical infidelity, obviously, because we're so possessive, we're all carnivores, we're all animals. We tend to think about that as being the highest form of treason, if you will, when it comes to relationships, right? She slept with somebody, he slept with somebody. That's the craziest, blah, blah, blah. But there is such a thing as emotional infidelity, okay? And emotional infidelity is when someone else besides your significant other, right, is really your go-to for all the things that you would consider like intimate topics. And I'm not talking about sexual. They're not all sexual. Sometimes it can be when it comes to problems you have, challenges, things that you champion, successes, things of the nature. Instead of you going to your significant other, you're going to him or her. And that's the person that you really engage, or you have a serious problem or something's going on. You just go totally out of the relationship to deal with, your friend. And while you're not sexual with that person, this person does in many ways have your heart and your mind, right? There is such a thing as emotional infidelity, and you have to be careful about that. And this is not just in terms of, a platonic situation. Girls who have the sister girl network and things of that nature. That can also be the case too, where there are a number of significant conversations that you should have with your significant other that are actually taking place with your girlfriends or your buddies, and that's not the right way to be. You have to also make sure that your significant other plays a key role in terms of being someone that you can talk to, that you can confide in. Because remember, especially in a situation where you guys are under the same roof, for all of those that are married, engaged, or whatever your situation is, especially when you're under the same roof, that significant other is also responsible for providing a safe haven. You have to do this. It's important that you do that. So when we're out in the world, especially us men, when we get home, the goal is that you create a safe place, right? That we can feel secure and that we can talk. We can take off the armor, that we can have this conversation and be transparent, be vulnerable, that we can cry, that we can scream if we need to. And if we find that we have to do that in the bosom of someone else, well, I'm sorry. While we may not necessarily be carrying on with the physical side of things, there is now that we are talking about emotional infidelity being taking place in that situation. So be very careful about that. If you feel uncomfortable about it, you want to talk to your significant other and say, listen, I'd like for you to open up. I'd like to be your friend. I don't want to be your all, because the reality is it's unhealthy for you to be everything to your significant other. Your significant other should have friends and be able to engage and talk about all types of things. And can you be all things to them? Absolutely not. However, in all aspects of, intimacy or things to talk about, there may be a number of those things that you should be involved in. And if you're not involved in those things, well, you need to make it known to your significant other that you'd like to, occupy that space. And hopefully you'll experience some difference in terms of the level of communication, the frequency of the communication, and you'll be able to actually make some inroads. However, if the activity continues and you still find yourself on the outside, then what I'm going to say that you need to do after, of course, seeking some professional assistance, is I'm going to say that you need to then stay on the outside. Unfortunately, in certain instances, it's very hard for people to incorporate that friendship into the relationship. Often, and if they're not endorsing that and endorsing you into that circle, then that can be problematic, and it's not something that's going to go away that easily. In many instances, that friend is someone that's been around through thick and thin, and so you may be on an uneven playing field. And more than likely, if you have made the request, made them more accountable, communicated transparently about where you are and how you may feel even insecure about that situation, you may need to go ahead and make some transitions yourself. Okay. D West talking about love thyself. Invite someone to share your love with. Absolutely. Devet, what's going on? Grief, I see you. Yes, I remember I said we should want to bring our A game. Absolutely, Daphne. Pretty sexy, what up? Thanks for joining. By the way, 37 minutes in and no cough left. Whatever. All right, let's not talk about the cough situation, because you know what'll happen. Then before you know it, I'll start coughing. But anyway, moving right along. 72 Red Boom, thanks for joining. PYT, that's hard when you've been hurt, been an equal opportunity lover, clean slate, innocent until proven guilty. Absolutely, you want to make sure that people have a clean slate and they're not operating from the deficit of your wounded heart, right? Daphne co-signing stuff. D West, should I be ashamed that I'm polyamorous. Can't you be polyamorous and faithful? Sure, if you're faithful to the 2 or the 3 or whatever you're doing, D West, you clown. PYT, it's complicated means you are not single. That's a simple answer, right? Does everyone agree with that? It's complicated means you're not single. How about if you are single and you say it's complicated? Meaning, I'm single and I'm unavailable. Would that make it complicated? I think it qualifies as another example of it's complicated. What are your thoughts, everyone? I feel that I can be a cop out, complicated. Okay. Listen, thanks for joining us. 215. Can a relationship survive emotional infidelity? Absolutely it can. However, the only way that it can survive emotional infidelity is if the person that committed emotional infidelity does a couple of things. One, of course, includes you within that circle, right? Communicates more, changes their behavior in that space, and also functions in a space that's more transparent. Sometimes, you may say, I want to learn about certain things, or I want to hear about certain things that are going on with you. That's great. Just know that you're not going to be the only one, right? So that emotional infidelity also often deals with someone else getting the lion's share of information or access to your significant other, and you're just kind of like there on the outside looking in. So, when you talk about greater levels of inclusion, transparency, vulnerability when it comes to how they may interact with you as well as the other friend, you're just really ultimately asking to be more of a friend. And typically this thing is missing from a lot of relationships. People get into a relationship, but they forget the early stage of the relationship should be a friendship so that you do feel very comfortable interacting with this person and talking about all types of matters, both, personal or professional or spiritual things of that nature, right? So that's why the friendship being the bedrock for the relationship is so important to the healthy, to how healthy that relationship is going to be overall. All right. It's only in this country we are stuck on monogamy. People are always cheating. If not, it may be a physical cheat, spiritual, emotional. Okay, D West. Clearly you're on a campaign. All right. That's my bro there, everyone. Let's talk love and life. Thanks for joining. Duchess, what's going on, babe? I see you. The shout out needs to take off the armor. True. If a king can't take off his armor at home, then a king is not home. I totally agree. David Anderson says, shouldn't you build a friendship before you start a relationship? Just said that. I totally agree. All right. So everyone else is in agreement. Rita, thanks for joining us. PYT says, nothing is complicated if you are single and unavailable. That means you have no attachment to anyone. Well, it can be complicated for someone that is actually trying to get to know you, and they ask you what your status is, and you say, they say, hey, do you have someone? Are you in a relationship? And you say, no. And then they say, are you married? No, I'm not in a monogamous relationship in terms of just dating someone, and no, I'm not married. And so they're looking at you like, so you're single. And then you say to them, yes, I'm single, but I'm unavailable. And to some extent, they say, is it because of me? Is it my breath? Is it how I look? What is it? No, I'm just unavailable. So that can be a complicated situation because not many people are walking around saying that they are single and unavailable, right? So that's a good example, I think, in my humble opinion, as to why, you could actually be in a complicated or say it's complicated and not necessarily mean that you're not single, right? So Daphne says, I think using complicated means I don't want to share the entire truth about where I am in a relationship-wise, and I totally agree with you on that. I was waiting for someone to tell me that same answer, and that is, again, when you say it's complicated, sometimes you don't want to give the story. Sometimes you really just don't. You just want to say, I'm not interested, but this is my way of saying that it's not this or that, but whatever. So a lot of times it follows a rather laissez-faire kind of attitude, kind of nonchalant, whatever kind of attitude towards, answering the question. But people throw it out there. Anyway, Chrissy, thanks for joining. AKA Sherry, what up? Pretty 60 says, sometimes the friendship is what sustains a relationship, especially when going through rough times and the candles dim. I totally agree, right? Friendship. The best thing you could ever be initially in any kind of situation is a friend to someone. This allows you to open up the lines of communication, to transplant, to really be transparent in how you communicate, and more importantly, to have fun, right? Often when we walk into a certain space thinking that, okay, this person is somebody I really want to date, and you're so serious about it, you don't necessarily have as much fun as you may have with your friend. With your friend, you may tend to laugh a lot more, and you may also tend to share more things about what's going on with you because you'd have less fear of acceptance and less fear of being perceived a certain kind of way or judged, if you will, right? Jam Down, thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. 215 says, complicated is when you're legally married but not yet divorced. So you're single, not legally, but also not emotionally available to date somebody. There you go. There's another example, right? You are, you're separated, but you're not necessarily divorced yet. And as some of you may know, a divorce can take a very, very long time. So understanding that a divorce can take a very long time, well, what do you do in the interim? Do you yarn? Do you take Zumba classes and go to Bible study? Or do you once in a while hang out? And someone asks you the question, you might just give them it's complicated, right? So Beauty and the Peacock, thanks for joining, right? D West says, married is married, blue papers, please. I hear you. But when the divorce comes, it comes, but also sometimes, just sometimes, when you're getting a divorce, your significant other isn't always ready to sign the papers right away, or there's other things to handle in terms of property, custody, things of that nature. So it's not always a quick transaction, if you will. So these are some great examples of it's complicated, right? NMRSSN says, what's up? Thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. System of Curves is cracking up. We're talking about all things relationships. As you already know, we talk about any question at all, any topic at all that you have that is relationship related. Every Wednesday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is what we do. All right. So Beautifully Divine says being single and unavailable could also mean that you're wise enough to know you need to do some more work on yourself before you get involved with someone else. Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, being unavailable often means that you're emotionally unavailable because you got some more healing to do. All right. And it's very important that you do the healing before you get out there and you start hurting people. Because you've heard of this before, I hope. Hurt people. So heal first, all right? I know healing is boring to some people, right? Many people are just, focused on the idea of I just need a companion. And I totally understand that, especially during the wintertime. On top of that, it's tough. But at the end of the day, manage expectations if you're around someone, all right? And if you're emotionally unavailable, then let them know. Okay, it's important not just for them, but also for you. If you're emotionally unavailable because you haven't healed, and then you get with someone, well, congratulations, right? Your feelings are really not accurate feelings because you are still working through some stuff. And there's no way you can accurately get a grip on where you are in that relationship because you're actively rebounding. And this is a reality. This isn't my humble opinion. You can look this stuff up, people. I don't make this up, all right? Only time complicated should be used. Only time complicated should be used. Okay, so you're referring to when you're married, I guess, huh? So System of Curves says we need warmth. Unmarried warmth over here. Unengaged warmth. You cracking me up over there. I hear you, System of Curves. Right? So wintertime, I hear you. But at the end of the day, you got to be responsible, not just with your feelings, but with other people's feelings. And so while you may be saying, you know what, you're not Mr. Right, but you're Mr. Right now, that person could be looking at you, butterflies in their stomach and feeling all kinds of warm about who you are and your place in their life and all this other great stuff. Meanwhile, you're getting ready and getting geared up for a hot girl summer. Congratulations, you just broke that young bull's heart. All right, be careful out there, people. All right, love responsibly, cuff responsibly. All right, date responsibly, communicate responsibly and transparently. All right. So 215 says, PYT says, get a body pillow. Yeah, get a pillow or two, or throw some neck pillows in a microwave or something. Let it cool off for a second and then chill. How do you encourage one to seek healing? Who's anti-therapy? Well, anti-therapy is, I understand culturally, a lot of people are anti-therapy. So a couple of things you should do. Number one, this is my opinion, right? And you may not be religious, but you should pray more often. You should pray. You should get into a mindset where you pray on it, because at the end of the day, you want to pray for discernment. You want to pray that you can actually get into a forgiveness state of mind. Often coming out of a situation, you need to really come to grips with the steps that you took and what are lessons that you can actually learn. So forgiving yourself, taking the steps to forgive other people also is very important. So prayer is key. Meditation, I believe 110% in meditation. That's being alone with your thoughts, no distraction, no music playing and all this other stuff, but literally just, meditating and getting yourself to a good, even space where you're comfortable being by yourself in silence. This is what it sounds like. You heard that? Good. Meditation is key too. Other things you can do. Keep a journal, a diary. Write out your thoughts. Express yourself. All right. This is very important, especially when you're healing, because your journal can actually keep a nice track record of where your thoughts were, how you were thinking about different things, and you can go back and reflect on that. So a journal is a very good way to be able to also, get that out there, in terms of expressing yourself. The last part, but not least part, is identifying someone that you trust, someone that you can talk to, someone that you can engage with in conversation that's not going to be judgmental, and also is not going to be overly prescriptive in terms of telling you what next to do. Sometimes you may just need to vent. You just need to get your your thoughts out there into the world and hear yourself speak a little bit. I think that can be very helpful as well. And if you are in a space where you're noticing that your thoughts, your feelings and everything else are really, taking over you in a way that is very toxic, what I would just hope that there are certain people in your space that could still reiterate the need for you getting additional assistance, because, certain situations, whether it's a breakup, whether it's finding out something bad about your significant other, right? You found out they cheated on you or they did something else. They violated you in some kind of way. These are things that are, that often are very hard to get over by yourself. And no one is a team unto themselves when it comes to getting out of certain tough conversations or tough situations in their life. So make sure that you use the people in your network. All right. We are coming up on 10 o'clock. And I think I got a minute and a half left. All right. All right. So any other last minute questions? Should we put our expectations on people we're dating or in a relationship we're with? How can we make sure we don't? You have to take inventory of your own thoughts and your own emotions, okay? You got to focus on what is it that really is going on inside of you versus what you're actually experiencing through someone else. So that's very important that you do that, all right? Make sure that you take inventory and that you're willing to have the tough conversation with yourself when it comes to how you're moving and how much of what you're actually experiencing is based off of what energy someone else is giving you, all right? I'm big on energy, so I hope that you also can understand where that's coming from, all right? PYT, I agree. Be careful of the vitamin D that you get in your life, all right? Not all vitamin D is good for you, all right? All right. What else? Yeah, 215. Yeah, don't worry, getting ready for those T-shirts that are coming out very soon, the relationship script. And that is one of the the terms you're going to see out there, all right? So we're down to 30 seconds. I want to say thank you to everyone that joined me today. Every Friday, I said Friday, right? You know I'm tired. Every Wednesday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., you can catch me, right? Wednesdays with Wes. I'm Donovan Hitchmaster West. It's been a pleasure serving you all, and thank you so much. Do me a major, major favor. Share this with someone, all right? Share this with a couple people you think may get a laugh out of it or actually receive it well, all right? It's been a pleasure. Peace.